Hey gang, welcome back to Joe Daddy's Garage. Today's video is a maintenance video on a 2017 Mazda 3. This belongs to a friend of mine, and as you know, I do mostly old car stuff, but I also do maintenance work like this. So what I plan to do, he had some noise in the rear brake area, and so I'm going to replace the pads and the rotor on this side. So of course you need to jack it up to get the tire and wheel off and get a jack stand under it, and then you're going to need a set of tools to do the process. Now, one thing specific about these cars is it has electric parking brake, so you have to know how to disengage that, otherwise you'll never compress that caliper and you could cause some damage. So I'm going to go over that in just a second. I also want to point out that I went and bought a new brake rotor because the other side is okay, so I only need one. And one thing you need to know is whether your car was made in Mexico or Japan. And I didn't know for sure. So I went ahead and got both sets of brake pads from O'Reilly. And I figured I'll just take the one set back when I'm done. Now I did take a look at it, and this is a Japan model. So now I know. I should have taken a picture of the VIN number before I went to the store, and I would have known that. As you can see, I have it jacked up, and I've exposed, obviously, a bad rotor. This thing is chewed up. You can see the debris collected here and up on here. And to change this, it's not that bad. So you'll be removing this bolt and that'll remove the caliper assembly. And then the bracket will have to come loose to get that out of the way so that the rotor can come off, and then the new one goes on, and you reverse the process. Now typically when I do this, I just have a set of metric wrenches. I don't know what size, I'll tell you what size they are in just a minute. And I'll use a metric wrench and I'll use a mallet to break the bolts loose so that I don't beat up my hands. Also, I have a couple different things here. I have a disc brake pad and caliper service toolkit from Harbor Freight, I believe. You can use that, or I will post a link to the regular style clamp basic caliper compression tool. I think mine is either missing or I broke it, so I'll put a link to that as well. Or you can use a big set of vice grips. So I'm going to go over the sequence to disengage the parking brake, and then we'll get started on this. So in order to disengage the parking brake, I'm going to push the start button twice. You'll hear some motors moving and different things. This just turns the vehicle on. Then I will press the gas pedal to the floor and pull up on the parking brake. Now you should have heard that motor. That was basically the motor pulling back on the caliper. So we want to disengage the function of the parking brake. So I'm going to push the start button twice. That's going to turn the vehicle on. Then I'm going to push down on the gas pedal. I'm going to push down on the parking brake button. And then I'm going to push this start button 3 times. You should hear the motor turning right now. There's the end of it. So now they are retracted, and we should be able to take everything apart. I'm going to turn this back off, and we'll get started on the brakes. Okay, it's a chilly day in Georgia. I'm going to start with a 13mm wrench. Go to the upper bolt, tap that with a mallet, break that loose. Same thing on the lower one, break that loose. Now sometimes these retainers will try to rotate. You can maybe hold it still with your finger, which is what I'm doing, or you'll need to put another wrench on the bolt head of that basically and hold it still. And those are usually like a 17 Yeah. So in this case, it started to get tight on me. So I'm going to use the 17 and turn it in the opposite direction, and that'll help speed things up just a little bit. Okay. So there's that bolt removed. And then take the upper one off as well. That one may just turn out. Now these bolts, typically, this is showing some Loctite on the bolts. Not a bad idea to replace that. I'm going to slip the caliper off. I'm just going to set it up on top for the moment. I'm going to look at these pads. Not that there's much to look at, but once you take these out, you can do a comparison. Like I said, I bought the 2 boxes. So, and you also note that this one has the scrapers. There's 2 little tabs on this. So the scraper went to the outside. So whenever you're putting it back in, always put it back the same way. Now what I normally do also is I set the outer one kind of outside of the vehicle, and then I'll take the inner one and I'll set it more to the inside. That way I can remember. If I don't remember, oh, look at that. That one has the scrapers too. There's really no wrong way then. At least unless, we'll find out when we open up the box. Normally I see these where there's a set on either side, but if all 4 of them have scrapers, no problem. But still, I'm going to set that to the inside. Now, this caliper, I can just kind of set it to the back a little bit. Make sure it's not hanging off of the hose, but there's 2 bolts on the inside that hold the bracket. And I can't really set the camera back there, but I can put this wrench up and figure out which size they are. So in this case, it looks like 14. So whoever had 14, you're the winner. Okay. We're going to take this loose, doing the same technique with the mallet. I'm just going to set this here. I'm going to hit this with the mallet. Again, don't abuse your hands. It's the only set you get. And trust me, as you get older, things stop working so well. So again, 14 millimeter. And this will definitely have Loctite on it. So I'll get these 2 bolts out, and then we'll go on from there. That's a long bolt. Normally Ford puts in really long bolts for no reason, but this is a really long bolt, and you can see it did have some Loctite on it. I'm amazed sometimes. This bolt should not even be this long. And I say that because as I get this out, pull the bracket out, if you'll look, you'll see that's how much of the bolt is sticking out of the back side of that bracket, because the thickness of that flange, and you can see the witness of where the rust is, that's about 8 threads, well, about 6 threads too many, but it's what they do. Now when you have this bracket off, and the nice thing you need to do is check these sliders. So typically these need to be able to move freely, and what you can do is you can pull these off and clean them up and re-grease them, but these are okay. I already know these are sliding very nicely. You clean it up, put new grease on them, and the rubber boot pops back on. And the only reason this is even resisting at all is because it's cold outside. Otherwise these are fine. Now, this will allow you to take the rotor off, and you can see this one actually had a screw location by the looks of it, but there's nothing in this hub that indicates that it had a screw in it at any time. So this is a good time to check the hub as well. Make sure that it rotates fine. No issues there. And we should be able to compress this caliper. Now this, I can see it has the three slots in it. So normally these may be the type that have to be turned in, like you have to rotate the assembly in. I'm just going to try to put a little bit of pressure on and see if I can't push them in. So I'll set up my tool, because it doesn't look like I can get enough. I can't get enough reach, and besides, the motor is back here, so you don't want to use the calipers or the vice grips. So I'll set my tool up, and this thing is pretty handy. You can use this for a lot of different configurations. Basically, this one is designed to rotate assemblies in, and you can see it has a whole bunch of adapters on it. But what you need to do is slip this plate over the handle, and that creates your compression point. Okay. Now, because I don't think it's going to matter about this piston. This only has 2 posts on it. What I want to do, in order to protect the piston, I'll take one of these plates. You can see it has a post sticking out of it. I will slip this over onto this, the end of this. Oh, I'll need a bigger one. There we go. So now that creates a flat surface. Basically, I'll slip this into this and rotate in order to compress that piston. And it should compress without any problem, and it is. It's moving nice and free. I'm not being forceful, I'm being gentle to let the fluid compress back out of it. Now when you're doing this, it may be beneficial to take the cap loose on your master cylinder, and if your vehicle has been serviced, meaning somebody has changed the oil and they've decided to add brake fluid to your reservoir, you may need to withdraw some of that. Now what I typically use is a little syringe, and I will draw fluid out as it comes up into the master cylinder. So I'm just going to compress this. I'm going to also go check my reservoir, see how full it is. Alright, I'm going to pull this cap off and get a look, and I don't see any fluid. The fluid's way down low. So I will continue to compress the caliper, and then I'll double check that to see where the fluid level is. Okay, let's just continue to rotate this. It's compressing nice and easy. There's no resistance. I mean, there's minimal resistance, let's put it that way. But it is rotating very nice. Now, if you tried to do this without putting this in service mode, you would never ever move this piston, and you would probably, if you did, you would probably destroy your parking brake system. There it is. That's bottomed out. So I'll take this back off and see the piston's all the way in. So that's ready to go. Easy peasy. Now I'm going to get the rotor out and put it on. So when you get your rotor, you're going to find that it's in a plastic bag, and the reason for that is they put a thin coat of oil on these typically, and that is to prevent it from rusting, and the bag just also keeps it clean. So there is just a tiny bit of oil on this. So what I normally do is take some brake cleaner and I will remove that oil, and I'll do that next. So I have some brake parts cleaner here, and typically all I do is just spray some onto one of these shop rags and then wipe this down. You can see the residue coming off. Alright, I now have the rotor in place, and the caliper bracket is next. I went back into my shop and I wire brushed out the grooves here so that nothing may bind up the pads. I also have put some Loctite. This is from a previous job that I did, leftover, but I put some on the bolts, and this will slip in and basically just put it back in place and thread in these really long bolts. Tighten those back down with the 14. So I have those bolts snugged up, and I'm going to use a torque wrench. According to what I found online, 38 to 48 foot-pounds. So I have this set at 42. We'll see if I can't get these tight, or as tight as it needs it to be. Let's put it that way. So I'm going to get this on here. There's one. It's kind of hard to do with the bracket hanging here. Or the caliper, I should say. So I'll get on the second one. There it is. Okay. So that takes care of the caliper bracket. Now, the bolts that hold the pad or the caliper to the bracket are 17 to 19 foot-pounds. Now you know. So now that we've got this in place, I need to open up these boxes and determine which one is the right one. Did I guess right? 50-50 chance, right? Maybe not. Let's look for the other one. Look at the other one. So this is SC 1729. And that looks more accurate. Now what's interesting is this one has the 2 scrapers. This one has a single scraper on each pad. On just 2 pads, I should say. But let me see. I don't want to bust these open until I'm 100%. And that doesn't feel right. Let me go back to this one. You know, as I look at these now, I realize those aren't actually scrapers. Those are tensioners. I thought those were scrapers, but they're not. Hang on. Okay, guess what? The brake pads that I bought, 2 different sets. One was Japan, one was Mexico. Neither one of them were right. The reason is the electric parking brake. So if you're ever going to get parts, make sure they know that it has the electric parking brake. So what you end up getting is these import direct pads. This is a fancy box, by the way. So you open up this box, and you got this secondary panel. You open this up. Look at that. They got foam in here. This is really cool. Now, what you'll see is You've got this pad right here. This I thought were scrapers originally. These little retainers, let's say, anti-vibration pieces. They're not. They're meant to keep this thing stable in the channel, but this is the scraper. So with this kit, 2 of these do not have scrapers and 2 of these do have scrapers. So now the decision has to be, how do they go on there? Well, typically, if I look at the one without the scraper, I'm going to put that on the back side. And to do that, it would have to be kind of pushed in so that that little tab holds it in place. And it takes a little bit of effort. I got the one in. Let's see if I can get this other one to go. There it goes. Okay, so it's like a spring, so it holds it in place. Now this other one, I don't know if it's going to make much difference. You've got this pad, looks like it has room set aside. Let me try this one. This will be the telling. Yep. So that one seems to have a little more conflict with that scraper. Let me look at this one again. Yeah. So I'm going to put this one on this side. And again, I have to push down on this and push in at the same time. And that scraper now clears. So I'm going to say the scraper needs to go forward and up. This one on the other side would be flipped over. That's going to work. There's like a little bit more space for that. So at this point, all I have to do is put the caliper back on. Well, it's nice that the sun is cooperating at this point. So I will put this back into place. And again, those sliders are moving easily. Now this did show that there was some Loctite on there, so I will put just a little bit back onto those just because I'm trying to replicate what I've seen on this. And as I said before, the torque, if I remember, was 17 to 19, so I set my torque wrench to 18. And I may have to use this other method here to get this one snug. I know that the it was turning pretty easily on the upper one, but this one I had to use a wrench previously, so do the same thing, snug it down. What's weird is this wrench, this spacing, you almost need like a narrower wrench because this will get caught in that washer space. It's kind of weird. I don't know why they didn't accommodate for the thickness of the wrench. Alright, so I reset my torque wrench. May take a little bit here to get this to where I need it, but there we go. This one's a little bit harder to get to or get on. Probably could have used a longer socket. There we go. Now that the caliper's back in place, what I would normally do when I'm doing a brake job is go back into the car, push the pedal a couple times, and refill this caliper with fluid. The reason for that is when I go to the other side and I compress that caliper, it's going to also push fluid up into the master cylinder, and I don't want to lose too much fluid. In other words, if I had to remove fluid whenever I was compressing this, and then I don't push the pedal, it's going to keep that level high. And when I go to the other side and start to compress the caliper, it's going to try to push out even more. So just a little thing you can do in between each wheel is to just do the brake pedal pump. But I'm going to finish up the other side, and then we'll go back into resetting the parking brake, taking it out of service mode. So both sides are done. The wheels are back on. Lug nuts are tight. I don't have the torque specs on that. You can look that up if you want to. Up front here, I want to show that the reservoir, it didn't even come all the way up to the top, so we're good to go on that. In fact, I did not push the brake pedal yet, so some of that will go down with the brake pedal. And now what we need to do is take this back out of service mode. Before we do that, I will push the brake pedal down just to push fluid back into the calipers. So I've got good pedal. And what I want to do is hit the start button twice. Turns the car back on. And now I'm going to depress the gas pedal and pull up on the parking brake. And then I'm going to push the start button 3 times. And you should be able to hear the motors turning. And now it's adjusted back to where it needs to be, and it's out of service mode. Let off the pedal, let go of the switch, turn off the car, and you're done. So that's it. Now you know how to change rear brake pads on 2017 Mazda 3 with the electronic or electric parking brake. Keep that in mind whenever you're going to get parts. Otherwise, that's it. So thank you for watching this video. If you would, leave a comment and a thumbs up. And I also want to thank my patrons who continue to support me while I make these videos. I appreciate them so much, and I look forward to sharing more with you sometime in the future. But that'll be it for this video. So until next time, take care of yourselves. See ya.